So we are taking a walk into a place that I have passed many times as a former student here at UNC Chapel Hill. This is the old Chapel Hill Cemetery, and as we read in the sign over there, this is the section of the community cemetery where black people were buried. Some were slaves and some were free, but most of them would have worked for the university and would have helped to make this place what we now highly regard as UNC Chapel Hill. These were the people who helped to build it and make it what it was, although they couldn't have attended it. Katie Battle was born in 1886. She passed in 1968, June. Son of, and look at that, I believe that he might be related to this person because K.R. Battle, he was a son, possibly, let's see, June 20th, 1918 to August 3rd, 1938. He was just a mere 20 years old. I wonder what the story was. You see, it's so easy to pass cemeteries and not to slow down and pause and think about who these people were. But that's not easy for me. I want to know. I look at these weavers and I know that these are probably people who bought these plots so that they could be next to each other. Now, I've always said I want to be cremated. I put that in writing. There will be no stone monument to me as far as a grave site is concerned, but there is a place for them. They certainly do give us a history, and I'm floored by this. And so out of respect for the dead, I'm gonna walk through now in silence and just notice. You must know that some of these markings, like this is a grave. You see that? But these were people who could not probably afford to get a headstone. There was a mason. Look at the symbol. Jesse R. Jones. Looks like he was born in 1912. I'm sorry, he was born in 1858, February 12th, 1858. And he died August of 1912, it looks like. Jesse R. Jones, I wonder what Mr. Jones was all about. The old well. I almost crushed my finger on one of those when I was a child. It feels really peaceful out here, y'all. A lot of times when I go into cemeteries, I feel uneasy. My spirit is bothered. Look at this, Brooks, Brewer, Victoria. I bet they were husband and wife. But I don't feel any uneasiness here. In fact, oh, look at this. The original headstone broke, but they recognized the historic value and had it cemented in another stone. But you have to realize that a lot of these stones that you see out here are meant to mark graves that we may never know who is buried there. But the people who buried their loved ones here will put a stone there. I've seen my family do it before headstones come. You put something there just as a marker. James Stroud, he was 40 years old when he passed, has written on his headstone, O'Kelly Kirkland. I just wonder and know that there are some stories behind these people. Look at that. That is someone who was cremated, and well, I don't know though, because it's the same initials as these. And so we know that she was an Eastern Star, the sister to the Masons. And she was born October 14th, 1878, passed away April 14th, 1966. I feel really good energy here. And then if you look at that, beside that, that says in memory of Brother Henry Merritt, born 1871, passed away 1943. I wonder if that was her husband. I'm a history teacher, and so for me, this is so special. Look at that, 1800. My God. Taylor Whitted families from 1800 to the 1939. So, in love and memory, this is saying to these two families, going back to clearly when we were when black people were enslaved, 1800. Slaves were not freed until 1863 or 1865, whichever date you recognize. But 1800 is when this started. And so here again, I wonder if they have walking tours or brochures that answer some of my questions, but somehow I know they don't. But if I come back to the sign here, 1798 is when that's when this place started. This is when they made this graveyard. And this is a long video, but for me, I want to have this for my own records. I have to admit that I'm feeling some type of way about the fact that I walked past this, I drove past this so many times. I kind of assumed, if I can be honest, that these were Confederate soldiers or something. I just never would have thought that African Americans were buried right here in the heart of UNC Chapel Hill's campus. I never would have guessed that. I mean, if you look straight down there, that's my dad's Jeep, which I borrowed today. So Bianca started her basketball camp out right there. Now she's going to be all over campus, ended up at the Dean Smith Center. But this has been a day for me. And I'm trying to see if there's a path, because I'm trying to go to that gazebo. And it looks like this is one here. But you see the little flowers on a few of the graves, and it just makes you realize that somebody's coming to check on their family. Oh, look at this big one. Oh goodness, you have a headstone this big and you only put the last name? What is the story? It's amazing to me. The flowers over there. Gosh, I gotta go see this one. Please forgive me. This is the Craig family. Kate and Jay, father, mother. I just had to come and see. If you know anything about headstones even today, when they come this high off the ground, this is usually an indication that someone was a person of status and stature, importance, or wealth, or both. But let's see. Members of the class of 1891 placed this stone to the memory of Wilson Swain Caldwell, who lies here. November Caldwell, David Barham, and Henry Smith, who served the university faithfully. So the class of 1891 thought highly of this African American man, Wilson Swain Caldwell, and Swain is a family name of my relatives on my mother's side. Wonder if there's any connection there. I told you that was somebody important. So here was a whole class of students, and let's face it, these would have been white students who thought highly enough of this man to erect a tall statue like this. I'm trying to figure out how to get over here, guys, because I know I'm walking over graves now, and I'm so sensitive about that. Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, ancestors, forgive me. Okay, I want to see what this one is here. Okay, trouble field. So when you look at the trouble fields, you got two sets of trouble fields. This was Reverend G.W. and Ira was his wife. She was born 1901, passed in just 1984. He was born in 1897 and passed in 1970. And then if we come right over here beside it, you have another set of trouble fields, and this trouble field, Zoe Dale was the wife, I think, and Ira May, I don't know, Zoe maybe is the male. November 1921 to, I wonder if this is their son and his wife. Oh wait, but there's the same name, so is this their daughter? Oh, this is tough. I'm interested because Ira is the name here. Now I'm assuming Ira is the woman because the other was a reverend, and at this time, I don't know, 1970 is when this person died, so maybe Ira is the husband and maybe the wife was the reverend, and Ira here, but Ira May? Yeah, I'm really confused by that. But as you can see, I'm getting really into analyzing these headstones, and these social studies teachers, these are primary sources. Oh, let me focus on getting up this hill here. Goodness. Okay, so these are primary sources. You just look at the Carolina bus going by. That's the athletic field. Carmichael Stadium is over there. Arena, excuse me, is over there. Carmichael and the Recreation Center. So literally, this is in the heart of this university. So let's take a look at this. Losing the past, preserving a slave cemetery. The town of Chapel Hill Parks and Recreation, Old Chapel Hill Cemetery. In the 19th century cemeteries, temporary markers such as fieldstones, wooden markers, or plants were most commonly used to mark African American graves. See, even before I read this, I knew this because this is the way we did it in our family. And so when I visited the graves of my family going back to slavery times, some of them are marked with headstones. And when you see headstones as big as these, they were intentional about getting a stone that they knew would last. Although practical at the time because they were inexpensive and readily available, These practices resulted in a modern problem: unknown grave sites. To locate these unmarked burials, Preservation Chapel Hill and the Chapel Hill Cemetery Advisory Board conducted a series of archaeological surveys of the African American sections of the cemetery. By combining data on soil density, electrical resistivity, and ground penetrating radar, the team found over 300 previously unknown grave sites. Well, 300 souls that were gone and lost forever, except for a wonderful archaeological dig like this and study like this that respects the dead. These graves likely belonged to African Americans who were enslaved, employed by the university, or continued to live in Chapel Hill after emancipation. And here we see the researchers use archaeological and geological methods to discover unmarked graves in 2012. So I'm one of those people who really respects history and believes that we should slow down and respect the dead and what their lives represented. So this really makes me happy to see. Okay, so here, this is in honor of the men and women who served in the uniform of the United States of America. We've got Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, U.S. Public Health Service, the National Oceanic and Atmosphere Administration, or the U.S. Department of Commerce, and then the Department of Defense, or the National Guard Bureau. I'm going to keep this video going. You can feel free to stop watching, but I guarantee you that there's nothing else like this. Look at that. We've got the Rebecca Clark. I want to know, who was Rebecca Clark? What was her story? She clearly was someone important, because we have a whole gazebo named after her. And so, Rebecca Clark Memorial Gazebo. If I had known this place was here, I would have come with my books and would have studied and perhaps been blessed by the elders as I studied. Okay, here's another thing. Okay. College Graveyard, the old Chapel Hill Cemetery. On September 28th, 1798, George Clark, a student from Bertie County. Oh my God. You see what I'm saying? My hometown. Let me see. On September 28th, 1798, George Clark, a student from Bertie County and a member of the university's philanthropic society, died just 3 weeks after returning to Chapel Hill. Clark's death was the catalyst needed to create a college graveyard to prevent spreading deadly diseases by transporting the deceased for interment elsewhere. Although it began as a burial ground for students, professors, and administrators, it quickly grew to include the burial of town residents. The cemetery is 6.9 acres and contains 6 different areas, including 2 separate African American burial sections. The cemetery was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1994. You see, this is recent times, but this makes me so happy to see. With over 1,700 burials, this landscape provides a glimpse of the changing dynamic of standard burial practices, as well as the markers. Let me come back over here so we can get a glimpse of the map of the old Chapel Hill Cemetery. And so I'm wondering if we are now moving into the headstones for white people. I just want you to pay attention to why I would say that. We noted over here it said that this was the westernmost part of the cemetery, one of the sections for black people. Wow, look at this, y'all. Look at this. Look. Thus we, like birds, retreat to groves and hide from every eye. Our slumbering dust will rise and meet its morning in the sky. Written by George Moses Horton, again, George Moses Horton, who was an enslaved poet and intellectual. Even in slavery, you cannot hold down the intellectual, the scholar, the intellectually free. In honor of those buried here and unmarked graves, and this was set aside in September 18th, 2016. You can see relatively recent flowers there that someone has come to leave. But I'm thinking that this is the black section and this is the white section. I want you to look at the difference in the headstones. Look at how neat this side looks. I wonder if Rebecca Clark is a white woman. Because when you cross over here, notice the stones that separate this section. Those stones are there for a reason. We know that things were very much separated and segregated, and I believe those stones are there to mark the separation and the section for white and black. I could be wrong. Here's one that is engrossed in stones, but so I think that's a family. But listen to that, Thomas Sanderson Long. Okay, I really have a look at this, a whole section and a fence. I just don't believe this would be a black grave. Let's see, Sally Knowlton Woodward, wife of William J. Woodward of New York City. They want you to know. Born August 1841, died August 1868. She was just 26 years and 11 months and 22 days. I guarantee you this is a white woman. Notice the path, the clear path on this side. And we know how this works. I'm not trying to be funny, but interestingly, there are some markers over here because obviously, regardless of where you are, have always been white people who were not economically well off, and so they would have markers too. Look at this family though. Whoever this is, have money. Look at this. They are enclosed in a nice gate. Look at the detail in this gate. And so let's take a look at who this is. Warcraft. Oh, excuse me. Is that Margaret J. Margaret, wife of H.B. Guthrie, born September 22nd, 1812 maybe, died in Chapel Hill on June 1st, 1864. That's money. When you see this kind of height and a gravestone, and look at this. When you see this is somebody who was buried and entombed above the ground, that's money. When you're talking about this time back here, I want to go on the other side so I can see that. And this one is Emily S. Nunn, born 1810, died 1824. Could have been the mother of Mr. Guthrie. Look at that. This is his fence. W.S. Guthrie, 1892. I'm telling you, look at the detail in that. That's money. I know that this was a white man. I promise you, this is a section that is for white people. I want to just get over here, forgive me, to the deceased. Coldview, Blair. Yeah, that's really hard to make out. But I'm convinced that my theory is factual. Look at this. Bushes with flower blooms. Just if you look at the neatness of the layouts. Look at this Brockwell sog. This is the white section, and you can see it. And I just think it's so important to recognize this, because even with graves, you saw the difference in the black section and the white section. Look at this family, y'all. Look at all that money. Once again, when you look at the fact that it's fenced, and that's nice iron fencing. Philanthropic Society is what that says. The Philanthropic Society to which he belonged have erected this monument. Let's see who they are doing it. That is in memory of Mark Bennett, the freshman class in this university who died. Oh, maybe this was the young man who died just days after being here. I don't know. But I do know this. They thought very highly of this family. Oh, look at that with the columns. Still a grave marker. Absolutely creative. We've got these stones here. Again, this is different from separating by going all the way down. These stones are being used to, I believe, separate a family, or encase a family together, which is what you often see even within a bigger cemetery. Look at that one. So this was a stone, but then they came back and put some of the markers. Again, when you see all these taller, and guess what, guys? I have to tell you something. As I'm over here, I feel a sense of discomfort right now. I definitely feel a sense of discomfort in my spirit, like I'm not supposed to be here, and like that's what the feeling is. And anybody who knows me knows that I am very much in tune with the spirit world. And so I'm going to get ready to respect their wishes and move on. Here we've got John Berry, physician. He was born in 1838, died in 1902. He was a surgeon, 42nd Mississippi Infantry, and his wife was born in 1854. Her name was Mary Elizabeth Berry, and she passed in 1934. We definitely see, just like now, that many of the wives outlive their husbands. Not always. Here's a case where the husband outlived the wife. The last name is Bullitt. James Bell Bullitt was born January 1874. He passed March 7th, 1964. His wife was born January 28th, 1874, just 10 days after him. And she was born in Albemarle County, Virginia. And she died in Chapel Hill, November 27th, 1937, almost 30 years before her husband. So, and he clearly didn't remarry because he's buried beside her. And so I hope that you all can respect and honor. As we get over here now, we're getting into what I believe is the more modern section of this cemetery. Although there are some older graves out here, I'm hoping that you can see what I see, and that is you see more modern headstones. Although look at this one, Carrie Bell, Lake Royster, April 17th, 1876 to 1928. Her husband was born June 26, 1880, passed away just 2 years after she did, March 21st. And he was a PhD, and he had a law, it looks like, degree or divinity degree as well. I see a lot of berries out here. Look at that Pratt grave right there. Here again, that was a sign of status when you saw people buried above the ground like that. There, she was an Easter Star. If you can see the little star over there. But yeah, y'all, I'm gonna get on out of here because I'm definitely feeling like I'm not wanted here. But if you notice, here's another one of these water things. Every time I see them, I remember how close I came to cutting my finger off. I see another Mason over there, Reverend Thomas Shroud, it looks like. And I do have to say that there were stories of Masons who did help one another despite racial differences because of their allegiance to the principles of the Masonic order. So, but here again, some of these are going to be newer. Look at that one with the gains over there. If you look at that one, we have Sarah, born 1920. She just passed in 2005. And her husband, John Kaufman Gaines, was born in 1922. He passed in 2007. So, just like I said, some of these are newer, but then again, not all of them. If you look at Stonewall Jackson 4, 1887 to 1924, Ethel Gaddis 4, 1890 to 1969. You see some of the other taller headstones. Wow, look at that one. Look at this one up front. Now that was a family that had money. How do we know they're right there in the front? They had enough space for all those people. And here again, that tall marking in the middle of the grave. And so for those of you who want to know, how did she know? It's because I'm a history teacher, but I've always been a history appreciator. And I think that there's something to be said for lives that have been lived, whether they were lived well or not. When you look at gravestones, these are primary sources. I encourage families to take your children to your family cemeteries. And I am so glad that I took the time today to do this because, again, I walked past this place countless times. And I'm just thankful today that I slowed down. Look at that. And this is giving you an idea of where we are. That is the Eddie Smith Field House. That's one of the newer athletic things that were put up here. And then I'm going to come and wrap it up by just walking down. I want to see this. I'm fascinated with this section here because this family was somebody important. You can see because this is not just rocks stacked up. These stones were laid in cement. And look at the little plant things. My grandma had 2 of those on her porch. But these people, Carmichael, Donald Wright, Ellen Cruz Carmichael, it's the Carmichael families. I want to know more about them and who they were, and what they represented at this university. And I see the name Womble over there. I wonder if that's a connection to the Wombles in eastern North Carolina. We know that the Clark that was over here was from Berkeley County, and he would have been a white gentleman because at the time that he came and passed away, black people were still not permitted here. So yeah, this over here now, look, that's the nice section, but this over here, look, gotta pay attention to stuff. All of them got headstones. All of them got headstones erected from the ground. Many have headstones erected from the ground and still something at the foot You can see that people were wanting to be out here. This was the popular place to be right here now. Uh, and I suspect that these are the more affluent people. Mary Louisa Cox Azell, Major William Azell, William Edward Azell. This was the father, Major William Azell. This would have been the son who passed. The father passed January 28th, the son October 24th, 1993. Francis the boy Azell. Yeah, this is money. You could just look. And look, fresh flowers, fresh roses. These were recently placed out here. Fresh flowers, recently placed. These people have people who still care. Roy, Bernice Fitch, and Catherine McIntyre Fitch passed in 95, her husband in 1989. But here again, you see, let's just see what this one says. Okay, this is the same thing, talking about how this all started with George Clark from Bertie County. And again, the fact that he was a student from Bertie County and a member of the university's philanthropic society who died just 3 years after being here. This was in September 28, 1798, so slavery was very much still practiced here in Chapel Hill. And so we know that Mr. Clark from Bertie County would have been white. I wonder if his descendants even know the story. I wonder if the Clarks, C-L-A-R-K with an E, from Bertie County, know that this whole cemetery right here in the middle of UNC Chapel Hill is here because a student from Bertie County came and unfortunately passed away 3 weeks after being here. We know that it probably was from some kind of disease because they said that it was better to bury the dead here rather than transport them carrying diseases. And so this is, look at this, y'all, wait. Now whoever Patton Katie is, Patton Katie, look at that. Oh yeah, that's very intentional. And I think it's absolutely gorgeous to have your own little piece of shade for you and your family. That is absolutely beautiful to me. And somebody else here planted a tree. When you see trees planted here with things at the foot like that, that's what that is. The Neil thing, we know that's somebody of status. Look, they got the fancy calligraphy letters, and it's that tall. So this has been a really good experience for me. Manning over here, let's see, and we see the old Mannings and the newer ones. Isaac Hall Manning Jr., May 15th, 1912 to November 21st, 2000, a doctor who loved his patients and his family. His life, a treasured memory. Rest in peace, Dr. Manning. But you see, we got a lot of Mannings over here, so he was one among others, and I suspect they all were big players, major players in some way. Look at this, Robert Russell Clark. He was a dentist. This was his wife, perhaps. Yep, they were born 1 year apart. Ann Mills Clark. I see some more fencing over there, some more fancy graves. I definitely feel more comfortable over here. And so I'm not trying to be funny, but when I got to the wealthy side, I felt more comfortable. And if you know anything about this time period, there were some sympathizers, there were some rebels even back then. But I don't feel as uncomfortable here as I did over here. So whatever that is about, I'm not sure. But I'm certain that if we got deeper into the people who are buried here, we'd find out. So again, you're in the heart of NC, oh Jesus, I was going to say NC State, my other alma mater, forgive me, to all the Tar Heel alum. and a Wolfpack alum. I'm on the heart of UNC Chapel Hill's campus, and we have just done a walking tour. This is the 40-minute tour so far, so I absolutely will upload this to YouTube with the hopes that people will discover this video and recognize this very important part of North Carolina and certainly UNC Chapel Hill's history that is easy to overlook if you're not careful. Again, this is the old Chapel Hill Cemetery. 1798 is when it started. It has been listed in the National Register of Historic Places by the U.S. Department of Interior. And I am such a supporter of historic preservation and recognition and just honoring. And so I'm just going to keep the film going until I reach the end of the cemetery. I do want you to notice the hill. And if you think about in North Carolina, that when you come here, this is called what? Chapel Hill, because this is in the Piedmont section of North Carolina. I want you to see the front of the Carmichael Stadium. I'm sorry, Carmichael Arena. I don't know why I keep saying stadium. But these hills, even the hills, represent status. So you notice that the white people were buried on the more hilly side. And if I were teaching, I would ask students to deduct why that is the case. But since we are doing a walking tour, I'll simply tell you that it is because of flooding. If you remember during Hurricane Katrina, the number of caskets that washed up because they had lower land. It's the same thing in every place. The higher up you are, the less likely you are to experience flooding. We're back on the African American side again. The gazebo, if my theory is right, is on the white side, just at the beginning of the white side. And the stones going all the way down to the end mark the section where black people are buried. We see flowers out here on the black and white side because we all care for our loved ones. But if you look at how, I'm not trying to be funny, but it's not as well kept on this side as the other side. Just think about how nice the lawn is over there. And this looked like somebody that just got wild grass over here. No live trees blooming, no, you know, it just, the whole, I feel peace, I feel comfortable over here, but it makes me sad that this is the way we did things, because even this represents for me the difference in the way black lives and white lives were and still are valued. And so this makes me happy to see this first paved walkway up to the black section. Ooh, oh goodness. Okay. And I'm still gonna post this because yeah, it is important to get it in there. And my former student is wiping off my leg. And if you know me, I am clumsy. And so let's keep it moving. But I love that this walkway is here. This walkway is very encouraging to me because I guarantee you this would have been laid out in more recent years. And so this is encouraging, but again, if you look over here, it does not look as neat as the other section. Notice the stones But just listen, listen. I'm telling you, I can't describe it. Isaiah, I don't know if you feel what I feel, but over here, it just feels like the breeze is blowing. I hear more birds chirping, and I just feel so comfortable. It's just amazing. It's amazing. So rest in peace to the dead. I'm definitely gonna figure out what place in the video it was that I fell down, and I'm gonna use that as a teaser to get people to come and look for me falling down so that they can get this important history and maybe make connections to the fact that we all have graveyards around us. Why not just slow down to get the names? If it's your family cemetery, slow down to look at the names. And if you don't know a name, ask the eldest person in your family about that person. So again, this was the African American section here, and I believe it ends where those stones are. Old Chapel Hill Cemetery. It's been a pleasure doing this walking tour with you guys today, and I may do other tours. I certainly want to get some shots over at the Dean Smith Stadium, and I want to check out the new basketball museum that they have over there. So Isaiah and I are enjoying the day at UNC Chapel Hill, while Bianca is at the Tar Heel basketball camp for girls. And I just want to show here, this was older gymnasium, Woolen Gymnasium. You know, when I see these names, here's Winston. I do have to admit that I'm wondering if they were white supremacists. And as proud as I am to be on this campus today, I want to be clear while I'm walking on this campus that it's time to start righting the wrongs of yesterday. We saw a graveyard that looked completely different in the black section and the white section. So when we think about this professor not being tenured because of her work with the 1619 Project, please understand it represents systemic racism. We are better than this. And as an alumnus of this school, I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill School of Law, May 1999. I will not be silent about it. I will lift my voice because we are better than that. We are the oldest public university in America, a place where scholars can be found in just about every field. And it's time to cut out all of this foolishness, racism, bigotry, ignorance, and forge a day that we all can look forward to, where we are free in a nation that is truly just and equal, where we all have a chance to be successful if we are willing to work for it. It's time. 2020 for me marked the beginning of the new civil rights era. And for those who think that this is going to end, please understand that it will not. I believe UNC Chapel Hill and its students and graduates, alumni, faculty, professors, staff members, I think that this community is critical to forging a new way and a new day in North Carolina. And it's time for those of us who know better to do better and to show that we are willing to push these people out of positions who want to keep the racism and bigotry going that existed in 1700s and 1800s. It's time for change. I'm ready to be the change I want to see in others. I just threw that bag that was at the graveyard in the black section in the trash. And now I'm going to sanitize my hands. It took 2 seconds to honor my ancestors. And we honor them when we also say, we too are American, and we're not going to put up with this nonsense anymore. Martin Luther King had a dream, so do I. So do my children, as will my grandchildren. It's time for change. I'm letting it start with me. I hope you enjoyed this film, and I hope you had a good laugh out of the part where I fell down in a cemetery. We're now going into the student bookstore. They didn't open until 10, and so we did all that walking to wait, and now it is, what time is it out there? It's 10:56. So almost 56 minutes have passed since they opened, but we've had a great day so far.